remembering or memory. That's what I want to talk about, and I'm going to go with the how I remember things through applications first. And then
Okay.
we'll move on to the theory and the fun stuff afterwards.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So for those that follow myself and John, you are probably familiar with us using Obsidian. If you're not, hello, welcome to the podcast. Uh,
I we use Obsidian here. Well, no, yeah. No, my Obsidian usage is I think I was starting to use Obsidian, but now I almost live in Obsidian. I've kind of reached like that level of every day I wake up. There's one vault open. There might be even three.
3 volts. Oh, because you
Yeah.
separate your folders.
No, there's my old notes vault because some of the stuff didn't cut because we obviously had our joint vault, which we then separated,
Mhm.
which has become my main kind of like non-D&D vault. Then I
Right.
have my TTRPG vault, which manages all that stuff because that is not going in the same vault. And then I have my old notes like from before, which is like there's not a clean migration between the two,
Uh,
and half of them I'm not trying like they all have atomic notes and atomic. I look at it now and go, oh, this is just so much effort. This is just
I don't want
pain.
to do this.
No, no, I
I
would rather just read fun things and do
Precisely. I was did a live stream yesterday and I was trying to answer a question about reorganizing notes in a not so explicit way. They were saying that they were going through and reorganizing all of their notes because they had front matter and properties in and it was small notes and it was just hard to manage. And I was like, yeah, don't do it. And I think I said in the stream that essentially all of those small notes that you have with the properties and all that information, it's coming back to remembering, hard to remember what the file's called, what's
Mm.
in the file, why the file exists in the first place, where it came from. Like the actual thinking around the note, around the file, is really difficult to remember if it was a spur of the moment thing, which I feel like a lot of those atomic essay notes, whatever you want to call them, are. They're spontaneous, spur of the moment. Hey, I'm going to write about this thing for a couple hundred words, then not attach it to anything or engage with it for like 3 months, and then suddenly it appears. You're like, oh yeah, I remember doing this thing. Wait, what did it? What was it? Why does this exist again?
Why do I care? I don't because I have none of the context that I originally had that I could have had, but now I don't because
I feel like those sorts of notes are the I'm going to search something on the internet and that's the first result that appears. Like that's the sort of notes that I see people making when I read those essays. I'm like, yeah, but you could just do an internet search and get the same thing, or you could spend, I don't know, 2 minutes thinking about the topic and come up with the same ideas. There's no depth, there's no exploration of the attractor layout. Going really deep in the terms there.
oh, we're not even 5 minutes in the session and we're going deep today. Okay.
We're not even meant to be talking about ecological psychology.
I know. Well, we can't help it, can we really? Oh, I have to say this because it was one of the most proudest moments as an ecological psychologist and a parent.
Oh yeah.
Aiden used my brain, and he went, huh. Well, not my brain. And I'm like, good boy. Well done. Proud of you.
Proud father moment.
I was just like, well done. This is happening.
That's going to be a really unique experience. I hope you document well.
That's a yeah.
No, you're not documenting it. Okay. Please document your experience teaching your kids about ecological psychology because I'm
That's not
extremely
that.
interested. That
That's
would
not
be a longitudinal study that I would definitely want published.
cool. How the heck I would do that, I have no idea.
We'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Obsidian, obviously, we're,
Yes.
we're discussing using Obsidian for writing and thinking, and Morgan is what and I believe you still use for
Oh yeah.
all of action, time, whatever you want to call it, management, doing shit.
Doing shit stuff. Yeah.
Yes. GTD, getting stuff done. Morgan, I've been pushing them for over a year now to integrate with Obsidian.
Have we done it yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've done it. I've nudged them enough. I mean, half of the Morgan team now use Obsidian for their notes, which is nice. And obviously, all of the Morgan team use Morgan for their calendar management. And we did a internal conversation. I say internal, internal as in the Morgan server, so other people could watch it as well. Conversation about Morgan and Obsidian and the integration and what that would look like. And what I want
Yeah.
to do here is briefly discuss what we discussed, where things are sort of moving, and questions to you as a sort of Obsidian Morgan combined user, because I don't think you have tasks in Obsidian that you put into Morgan or projects or notes or anything like that.
I have projects, but then any project that's in, oh no, that's not true. That's in there as well. Yeah, they're kind of separate at the moment. I do kind of Morgan for my actions and Obsidian kind of for the thinking part as such. Because obviously they're separate, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Sarcasm there.
Oh,
So,
yes, a little bit.
so when it comes to the integration, obviously Morgan being events and calendars with tasks from Morgan Tasks or any integrated app that they accept. So, to do this, Microsoft To Do, ClickUp, Notion, those sorts of things. With the events and tasks, Obsidian, I don't do my time management in because there's no good calendar.
No,
Like there are a couple of calendar apps, but there's no good calendar. There's no good calendar view either. The data view calendar is awful, sorry, but it is. It's just like, hey, you've got 12 tasks to do. There's 12 dots shown in a calendar grid, but you can't see them. Not useful. And the task calendar doesn't
no,
have, the task plugin doesn't have a calendar view. It's
no,
just list. So Obsidian for calendar management is not great. Unless you're using a plugin specifically for it, but then you're limited to what that plugin is, which means you have like 12 or 15 different properties that you have to have in files, and it's a done, not done inside of the properties, which sometimes syncs but sometimes doesn't, and the calendar is a bit clunky.
yay.
So it's just easier to use Morgan.
Yeah,
But when it comes to Morgan's side, obviously you can't. I mean, you've got the description and the notes, but you can't really write in Morgan.
no, no, no,
So
no.
writing in Obsidian, which means there are, the way I see it, correct me if you can think of another way, but there are two different ways you could bring an integration between Obsidian and Morgan. One of them being a task block. So a task block in
Yeah,
Obsidian syncs to Morgan, and the
yeah,
other one being a file, similar to a Notion page where the Obsidian file syncs to Morgan.
yeah,
The metadata, the properties, the information on said block or said file would then be used in Morgan,
yeah.
right? The going with the Notion integration, because that's the one I think I would prefer to use or prefer to see inside of Morgan and Obsidian. What that essentially does, for those unfamiliar, is the Notion properties. So the done, the select, the multi-select, the dates, due dates, etc. All of those get brought over. And I really like the Morgan integration with Notion and how flexible it is compared to something like the Notion calendar integration. Slight dig there.
There's a thing to say about the fact that Morgan's integration with Notion is better than Notion's integration with Notion.
For the moment, we don't know what they're planning. I mean, it did take them 2 years to get an integration to work, but you never know. Maybe in the next 6 months it'll, I don't know, really fast forward and rocket. Yeah, skeptical much.
Bet.
So this integration with Notion and Morgan, you can select either a checkbox, so done or not done, or you can select a status to say it's in the writing process or the research process, and then it's done. And practical application of this is I'm working with someone else, I'm scripting for some of their videos. For me, my part of the project script is done once it goes from research to writing. That for me is
Yeah.
now done. Once it's in the writing stage, because I don't need it on my calendar anymore, because it's done. That's the way that they've done the statuses anyway. However, for other people, it's not done. So I can drag the task from Notion onto my calendar. Then when I tick it, it moves it over in the statuses. So in the Kanban board inside of Notion, it moves it over so the other people can see it on their filtered dashboards. You've now dropped your jaw.
That is a fantastic integration.
Yeah. But,
That is amazing.
uh-huh. That's really cool, isn't it? And obviously, there are loads of other filters and sorts that you can do with the Morgan calendar, but it's all based on the premise that you can access the properties and use or customize in
Decide
some
what
way.
That's really. Why haven't Notion done that? I
I
don't
don't know.
even get why. Well, I think I have a guess. It's to try and make it be more like a traditional task manager, because all
Mm,
the things that they're creating for Notion right now, like traditional project manager, actually, like they're trying to simplify because obviously it needs to be less complex, which takes away why people used Notion in the first place. They used Notion, at least from my perspective, and everyone who I've spoken to, they use Notion because all of the other ones, like Asana and Trello and all of those other, and ClickUp and everything, were either overly clunky and weird to operate with ClickUp, which I just did not enjoy the interface of ClickUp.
there was a honeymoon period, but after that, you sort of like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it just became impractical really quickly and boring, and I got bored. And then, or you have tools like Asana and Trello where they're so linear that the constraints are so high. Well, they're not even linear. That's not the right word I'm looking for. That the constraints are
Constraints.
higher. And now Notion is trying to add in those constraints retroactively. You've got the home thing that they've
Mm.
created. They've got the inbox thing, and they've got the choose your task databases. And if you have those task databases, you need to have these specific properties. And then you've got your calendar. And like, yeah, but Notion, you're missing the point.
I,
Like, I get why they're doing it because it's familiarity, but
um,
no. I don't like it because it's very much not what Notion is for me anyway. And I
mm.
realize that is my own bias. It's like Notion's customizability, their flexibility is what makes Notion like the choice for many people because they like that flexibility and it helps. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now if it weren't for Notion. Like we both shit on Notion quite a bit these days. But I don't know whether the same is for you. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the affordances that Notion gave me. Because
If
I
it
re
didn't give you affordances, you perceive affordances.
okay, fine, yes. The affordances that I perceived.
Mm, Still reaching a bit, but we'll leave it. Still reach because affordances obviously emerge. So yeah, there are
All
emergent
right.
properties because of perception.
I the emergent properties that I no one cares, only we do.
Exactly. So
I
yeah,
had that conversation with someone because we were talking about simplicity and we were having that conversation. Yeah, but what I do isn't simple, is it? And they're like, yeah, I know, but the result of what you do is simplicity, like the feeling, the emotion of simplicity. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of not. Like, this is what the experience is. And the response was, you are splitting hairs over something that most of your audience wouldn't give two shits about. And I'm like, but,
they
but,
do.
but, but they will when they realize what it means. And they will when they see what is possible.
It's literally like, are you inside or are you outside? Where does it make a
Yeah.
difference? No, it makes a huge difference. One of the sides is freaking cold and wet. The other one's nice and warm. Like,
Yeah.
it's a huge difference inside,
But
outside.
also, it's from a conversation of being outside, not inside. When they're inside forever. And I think, especially with my work, like until you're inside, the language has to be different, and I have to use the assumptions that are there.
Language different, yes. I don't think you need to use the assumptions because
Mm.
I don't use the assumptions. Even when I started talking with you, I didn't use the assumptions.
To clarify, I don't necessarily mean the overarching assumptions. I still use the philosophy that I have, but like some of the specific language assumptions that people have,
Right, right.
assumptions on the words that are used.
Yeah, I mean, with the going backwards a little bit with the notion,
Mm.
the so I came up with a bit of a blip when it comes to what Notion can do, which again is a small frustration. But the if you're in someone else's workspace, you don't have control over their database because you don't own their database, so you can't put whatever page in that database on your calendar. It has to be owned by you. Morgan's the same.
Yeah.
So that is a limitation, which is why I have my database in their space. So I can work around. I can work around it a little bit. But with that integration, Morgan plus Obsidian, instead of it being a database that you'd integrate with, I'm imagining it's going to be a folder, either a high-level folder or a smaller folder, maybe a file. But then you have properties as well. And that's where you've got like the date, the schedule date, status, the priority, whatever else you want to add on there. And I guess my question to you is when if we're using this file integration for the example right now, if we've got the file that's going in, what information would you want either going from Obsidian or going to Obsidian with Morgan? And while you're pondering that, I'm just going to express my personal view or my personal use plus view is my file in Obsidian is where I do all my writing. So what
Mm,
ideally I would want is when it's due, so have the due date synced to Morgan, but the schedule I'm not that fussed about. I'm not really fussed about anything else because it's all being scheduled and planned in Morgan, but I would like to know when it's
yeah,
due.
I think I would definitely want the files. I wouldn't want I don't think I would want the folder done via a folder, more a file.
What do you mean by that? As in the integration only looks at the file, or because when it goes into Obsidian, because in this context, the folder would be the database, and then the file would be the Notion page.
I see what you're saying. I
Yeah.
misunderstood. Yeah,
So you would say inside of the Morgan settings, look at my projects folder inside of this Obsidian vault, and then
yeah.
all of the files in that folder would then become the tasks inside of Morgan.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, I
then
think I'd be kind of the same. That's how I would operate it in basically exactly the same way as you. I would want it to be. I don't need the schedule date because that would have been done in Morgan.
I mean, I could have it, but because I have multiple schedules, I don't know what that would look like.
Oh
Is,
yeah, yeah, because
is it going to put in
multiple
like
like
tons of all the scheduled dates? Like, what?
yeah, because that would be interesting because we both do. We have multiple. We have one event and they are put in there multiple times as repeated
Mm.
events. So yeah, that would be.
I mean,
How they would do that would be interesting.
yeah, I'm even looking at my calendar now. I can see later on today I've got an ecological block time block, as it were, section of time, session of time, and that's from the original task. But the original task has got so many sessions that if all those scheduled times were to go into Obsidian, it would be a massive array of numbers, or I would have far too many properties to manage. So I don't think the scheduled time. I don't know how the schedule time would work in Obsidian, but the due date, that works. And
Yeah,
you
the
can
due
then
date makes
search by
perfect sense.
that.
I'm intrigued to see how many people actually do a similar thing,
What do you mean?
like operate in the same way that we operate in our systems, whether there is always multiple projects to a task. To be recurring events, so how they would manage recurring events would be interesting in there.
Yeah,
I guess they would probably have to have a recurring
property.
property, and then how would they add all of the
Well, the way the calendar works, one of the other calendar plugins is they have recur and then an array Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
which would match, yeah.
and then that would obviously match with the calendar because there are plugins in Obsidian that sort of do it. It's just they're not great. They're not as useful as Morgan, which is obviously why I use Morgan.
Yeah.
But yeah, even though that sounds simple, I don't see much more needed. If we were to get the Notion integration but for Obsidian, I'd be quite happy. If I can tick a
Yeah.
task done or not, and I can just if my Obsidian files were to appear in my Morgan as tasks, and I drag them on, and there is a link that says open Obsidian and it takes me to the file, I'm good, I'm happy.
Same. That's kind of all I would want. That's all I'd need.
If I add a due date in Morgan, a due date property gets put in the file so I can query it in Obsidian if I need to, I'm good. I think the only other potential thing I would want is an ability to group by, which would just be a property.
Yeah.
Because Notion, you'd have a select property, something like that. And inside of Morgan, because you can group by and order by whatever the properties are, inside of the settings in Obsidian in the Morgan Obsidian integration, just say, hey, I want to group by area. Let's call it area to use a para word.
I like
And
areas.
yeah, so I've got my Danny Hatcher channel, my Danny Talks Tech channel, my writing for the blog. those three areas would then be grouping the different files. So inside of Morgan, I would see Danny Hatcher, Danny Talks Tech, and writing as my grouped sections. I mean, I do that with my Morgan tasks already. They're just task lists instead of groups. And if that's inside of Obsidian as well, then I can do the same sorts of querying that happens in Morgan, but in Obsidian, I can just say where DH or where, whatever I call it, category is DH, and then if it has a due date, show it to me. So I can see the same list inside of Obsidian and Morgan. It's just Obsidian, I make the query. Morgan, the query happens inside of the task sidebar.
Yeah.
I don't see me needing anything else. And that to me would be the integration I would have wanted as a Notion slash Cron Notion calendar user.
Yeah.
If
Same.
if I move things around on my calendar and then moves it around inside of the file.
It's beautiful.
That's what I would want.
Yeah.
The alternative, or an additional version, would be the task block.
Yeah. I'm not really a fan of the task block. Like, I don't really use it anymore. Like for me, I'm just like, yeah, I don't use it because it feels closer to what Morgan already is.
Yeah,
So I would just put it in Morgan versus putting it in
Obsidian.
Obsidian. So that feels like it's almost trying to yeah, it just feels like it's double duty. It doesn't make sense.
I agree. I
I
agree.
would rather have it just be like file based. It's more flexible
Hmm.
as well versus having to use, and that assumes you have to use the tasks plugin, I assume.
I would
Um,
assume so, yeah.
which then once it is very much if the task plugin gets updated, Morgan are going to have time to update the Morgan plugin. So no, no,
The way I think it's been sort of fleshed out, planned out-ish, is there will be a Morgan plugin in Obsidian to get either files or tasks to Morgan because they can't do it through another plugin. That's just piggybacking way too much.
mm,
But if so, similar with the natural language dates and the reminders plugin, they both work with the task plugin, and the task plugin works with the data view plugin. It's sort of like communication between developers on the back end. How that works, I don't know. But if the syntax of the Morgan task is the same as the task plugin, because the task plugin is essentially just code on the back end, if
that's
Morgan
true.
uses the emojis like the task plugin, then you don't need the task plugin. But if you have the task plugin, it can still read what it is you're trying to say.
It's true.
So I don't think you'd need the task plugin. Having said that, though, using some of the task plugin logic would probably make sense. Uh, but as you say, the task plugin itself, I feel tries to like my use case would be the same as Morgan. So I wouldn't use the task plugin in that way. What I
Yeah.
am using it for at the moment is what we just discussed, but instead of the done tick box being inside of the file or
Mm.
the due date or created date, which is something I'm actually using with the task plugin, instead of having that inside of the file, I'm having that as a task block
Okay.
because I can query that slightly easier, and it's easier for me to tick it off as a task block than it is to tick it off as a file, because I don't have
Yeah,
to
that's
open up the
true.
file.
That's true.
So because when I'm in the query, I can see the task query and then I can right click and say in progress. So it stays inside of the query, but the task is moved to in progress. Whereas if it was a file, I would need to use metadata menu, click on the icon, click down in progress, and then it updates the file. So it's a little bit faster with the task plugin.
That's true.
That's what I'm using it for. It's same thing. It's two ways to do the same thing,
Yeah, pretty much.
which I mean, as long as the integration between Obsidian and Morgan does what I've said, then I'm good. The limitation I see with using the task plugin in this way would be that if you click on open in Morgan or open in Obsidian from Morgan, would it open up the task block? Because that means the task block would need to be in the file. And if it does need to be in the file, well, now I need the task block to be in the file, which means it needs to be duplicated in my vault, which I don't want,
Mm-mm.
or the integration somehow needs to look at the internal link of the task to then go to that file, which I can see being a massive headache in development.
Yeah, I don't like it.
No,
The other way.
exactly. The file properties just seems far simpler and doable. And I don't think you would need as much coordination with Claire or whoever else is developing the task plugin because it's just you doing files.
Yeah. Initial launch just to have the files. And then if they want to do the task plugin too, then go for that. It's like, you know,
Hmm. I don't actually know what sort of task Obsidian users are using. I know the task plugin is extremely popular. So I know lots of people use tasks, and I imagine the people inside of Obsidian that aren't using Morgan or a calendar app are probably using Obsidian as their task manager in some way, managing their tasks with due dates, schedule dates, recurring dates, etc., etc. So
guess
leveraging
they,
the task plugin would make sense.
yeah, yeah. And also it goes back to that discussion of like, does it really need to be like, would they actually use Morgan?
Well, I don't think some people use their calendar that much, and it's just I have a task list in Obsidian to do stuff, similar with just writing it down on a pad or a whiteboard or whatever, or in Notion. You just got a list of tasks, and they appear in a query that you're looking for. If they're doing daily journals, for example, you've got loads of tasks, and then they appear in a I don't know, in a query that happens in your template every day, and you see today's task or this week's task or overdue, whatever. All those things that are appearing, great, fine. But if you want to see a calendar of those tasks, there's no way to do that at the moment in Obsidian. If Morgan could do that as a Morgan plugin inside of Obsidian, that helps the Obsidian users.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if they want to bring their calendar into that, that's when they go over to Morgan. I'm not trying to sell Morgan, and I don't think, so having spoken with David, David wants to sell Morgan to Obsidian users. But
No.
obviously, for an application not to go bankrupt, it needs to get users. And I don't
Yeah.
want Morgan to become a Woven.
No, I loved Woven. Like genuinely it's one of my favorite apps, Woven. I
How,
was genuinely upset when they went.
how would you equate Morgan to Woven? Would you say Morgan is like the new Woven, or are they different?
I think they are different, but there's flavors of Woven mixed into what Morgan is now. Like the scheduling is very Woven like before Cron took it and decided to use it, whatever.
Well, everyone
Um,
uses it now.
Yeah, I know. It's annoying. But like because I think Woven was the first that I saw of having a calendar plugin with calendar scheduling built in,
Hmm.
which is so good. Like that in itself is just so awesome.
So, for those that are not in the Morgan Discord, I would highly recommend being somewhat active in the Morgan Discord because they tease different ideas and things that they were playing with. And I just remembered one that I think is going to be not necessarily a game changer, but it's one of those small things that's so nice. They are looking to visualize due dates. So, the tasks, for those unfamiliar in Morgan, have scheduled dates and due dates, what we've been discussing. The due date is like a deadline, the scheduled date's when they're scheduled. But you can't see the due date on the calendar at the moment because obviously it's not a schedule thing. But what they're looking to do is visualize it. So you have kind of like a ghost duplicate version copy of the duplicate of the due date. So you could have on your calendar, so say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you've scheduled in time for project A, but it's due on Saturday. There will be a due date visualization of project A for Saturday, and that's the
So
due
that when you
date.
click on it, it just goes whoop. Ah, it'd be so cool.
So it's like a ghost, a due ghost of the task. So you can see on your calendar. I don't know what to call it because it's not an actual event or task. It's a ghost date. It's like this the levels of calendaring. So you can visually see the due date of the tasks as well as or rather than the schedule date. And I've asked and probed. At the moment, it looks like it's a setting. What their working model is just a setting. You turn it on to show due dates, or you turn it off to not. But what I've asked to see is if it could be in a calendar set, if it could become sort of a thing that you add to a calendar set. And that means, so whether it's just a toggle on or off for that calendar set, so show due dates or don't show due dates. So you can say calendar set 3 is my planning one, and that's where all the due dates are. So you can have a due date calendar set. Like Yes, please.
I want yes, yes,
Just
yes.
nodding, just nodding. Yeah.
I
Uh,
would also love to see Morgan integrating Stripe with the scheduling.
okay.
That would be cool.
Yes, I think that is one of those big development sort of quarter focuses. I know at the moment, obviously, they're focused on integrations, having like they're doing the ClickUp one at the moment. They've done the Notion one. Well, I
They've
think
done the ClickUp one.
yeah, they've done the ClickUp one, but there's still some work to do because of the stuff in ClickUp side is a bit of a pig. I spoke with Luke, one of the developers in Discord the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, well, ClickUp do it like this and this and this, which isn't like anyone else." So, but what Morgan are doing is so good. And I guess insider information here. I'm working with Akiflow-ish on a video about comparing Akiflow, Morgan, Todoist, and TickTick. I say ish because they're sponsoring the video, but they don't know what the video is. They're just sponsoring like 90 seconds of it. So I'm exploring Akiflow at the moment, and Akiflow is good, but it's not as good as Morgan for me.
Yeah. That's the thing I come at. It's like all these calendar I'm like I just look at them and go, that's cool. But I'm over here.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the small things, and I think this is going to relate back to what we were discussing a bit ago with Notion and their direction. I was talking with David yesterday. David is the CEO of Morgan. He doesn't do much to do with the development side, but he tries to navigate where it's going to make sure Morgan doesn't flop. And we were having this sort of back and forth discussion, and me as a user, I'm like, right, focus on getting the app looking good and working good, like speed, the small features, the power features. I want this to like be a great app sort of thing. But him as the CEO, he's like, I agree, yes, but we still need either investors or we need people to sign up. Like they still need money for the app not to flop because obviously they've got to pay for servers, they've got to pay for the maintenance of the app with developers. Like an
yeah.
app needs money from somewhere. So getting the app to be fast doesn't necessarily increase their paid line because they could just be free users. You could have a million free users and the app would fold because no one's paying for the app. So it's like, how do we get paying users as well as improving the tool? And that's the balance. Obviously, every app has got to, well, every development team has to balance.
I think Notion are
Notion aren't in balance now.
no, they've gone very corporate, like because the money's there and they're
Yeah.
VC backed. So
I think we got out when it started to shift, and it's just shift more and more that way. Like, every
yeah,
time I see an
it's
update, I'm like,
scary.
that doesn't help users. That just helps your top line.
Yeah, it's sad. It is definitely a different, yeah, it's a different place now.
Even going back into Notion now, because I'm working with these other people, there is nothing new that I can look at and go, okay, I don't know how to do this. I know how to use Notion because of 3 years ago I used Notion. And there's
Mhm.
nothing in Notion that's new that I look at and go, oh, that's new. I want to play and explore that. No, it's the same app. It's the same thing.
There's a couple of nice new things, like not even new, but things that they fixed that I'm like, oh, cool. I wish they spoke about that.
Yeah, yeah, but there's nothing what I would say is like a significant change. Like when I look at Obsidian, it's not a significant UI change, but there are significant user changes, like adding
Yeah,
tables, changing the look of the Obsidian app. Like they are significant changes to Obsidian. There hasn't been many recently because they've been focused on performance.
maybe it's because Obsidian are still quite early.
I think they're a fairly established app. I
I don't
mean,
know.
they are a version one app, and they're fairly established when it comes to their users. They've got,
Bear in mind, Notion's version one app. You were in on version one. I came in on version two.
yeah, true. Can you hear the dog?
Maybe. No.
Okay, good.
Oh, yes.
She's been barking the whole time.
Yeah, every time you talk, I hear.
Probably where the microphone's like, oh yeah, now I should
Whoopee.
activate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because Obsidian is still in the 1.0 phase, except their 1.0 phase, they've really understood what people wanted. Whereas Notion, and I think the CEO of Notion also didn't realize what they were creating when they created 1.0.
Yeah.
Then once they brought in databases for 2.0, it exploded. Except I don't know what Obsidian's database feature is going to be, or
Mm.
whether they would even have a databases feature, as in that one thing that makes everyone go, "Oh,
I don't think it needs to, and I don't think. I
no,
mean, looking at Capano, like file first. That's the philosophy. So looking at Capano, I don't see it moving that way.
no, I don't think it will either." Which I think is, I like it.
Yeah,
I'm not
I think
complaining.
it caps the top line, but it maintains the user base. It becomes a stable, maintainable tool that everyone can use, and that's what I would prefer it to be. And I
Yeah,
see Morgan the same. I would prefer Morgan to be a stable, maintainable tool that people just use rather than this top line reaching AI, who knows what integration stuff.
yeah,
People use Google Calendar because it just works.
yeah. And now Google Calendar even has scheduling.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I would want Morgan to be a better version of Google Calendar. I mean, for me, it is. I don't
Oh
want
yeah,
it, I don't want to bloat itself out with loads of features and functions that are flashy that no one really uses. And
yeah,
I feel
absolutely.
like that's what the corporate people want. They want the flashy, oh, this is going to change people's world. No, just give me a tool that works and give me the small increase, like small updates that make life easier, like undo buttons.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. I can't. I hope Morgan stays in that direction because that would be good. Because I like that.
Yeah.
That's what I think I liked about Notion at first when I was part of a bigger part of the community.
Yes, I'm not anymore. I don't think you are either. So uh
I build Notion systems for people when they ask me to, but
yeah. Shifting on to remembering. So
oh.
shifting directions of conversation from applications to theory.
See you later, guys. Thank you for joining us for the conversation. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Yep.
We know. We see the graphs. For those
The
of you who remain, bye.
Yes, those nerds like us. I was speaking with Jeff very briefly because this video essay that I'm working on about ecological psychology, which is just over 2 hours, and it
Yeah,
goes deep into everything ecological psychology. I'm
that
talking,
was, that was the timeline that you published and showed, wasn't it?
yes, yes, it was.
I thought so.
Looks
I
fun,
just
doesn't
have
it?
like, wait a minute, that's 2 hours long. Oh, I know what that video is.
There are 274 markers.
I know. That looks quite rather you than me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's been months of work. The video literally goes through everything ecological psychology. I'm talking why species exists, why energy goes between different animals, how species come to be, direct perception, variables, both objective and relative. We've got physics in there, we got science in there, we got maths in there as well. Obviously psychology, because psychology. We've got some sociology in there. We've got lots of biology in there. And then we've got assumptions inside of coaching in there as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it. And one of the sections about thinking, remembering, cognizing is about the noise, pink noise, white noise, and brown noise. And how, for those unfamiliar with ecological psychology, apologies, this is going to go deep, but it's how a self-organizing system is a perceiving, acting, cognizing, self-organized, stable system is replicates pink noise. And the pink noise is therefore a signifier, a flag potentially for what a cognizing system looks like, which is used as a marker for whether something is embodied or embedded. Embedded being a cognizing system with something outside of the body, say a mouse. That's embedded because the mouse isn't embodied, not part of my body, but it could be part of cognition. There's a study that I mentioned in the video about this, and pink noise is part of that. And the conversation then moves towards thinking from this cognizing system, this embedded, embodied cognizing system. And so if we have this continuous thinking, because perception is continuous, and that's the argument ecological psychologists make. Perception is continuous, but
Yeah.
if perception is continuous, then past, present, future events are also somewhat continuous. Therefore, we are continuously thinking. My logic would therefore be we are always remembering. If we're always perceiving, we're always remembering,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
You.
Jeff Jeff didn't disagree, but he didn't agree. And the reason he didn't agree is because there is no line of when you start remembering or stop remembering. So there's no
Mm,
line of when you're using memory, when you're not using memory, when you're using past or not using past. There's no distinction here
no.
ecologically. So you can't say you're always remembering because we don't know when we start or stop remembering because there's no really good research on remembering from the ecological approach yet. So if you say we're always remembering, then you're assuming you're always using past experiences. But that might not be true because we might not always be using past experience with perception. And that was his argument because we don't know. We haven't done the
Yeah.
experiments, we haven't done the tests. So the claim about us always remembering is not unsupported, but unsupportable. So making the claim isn't necessarily ecologically valid. And that was Jeff's stance. And hopefully I've conveyed that well enough. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good. I like that. That's interesting. Because I don't disagree with Jeff either. And I don't disagree with you. I think because I've been thinking about this week as well, because I have a terrible memory. And this is the conversation that often happens in our house. Oh, I just can't remember things. I've got a terrible memory. I never remember how to do things. I can never like that is something that I've had conversations with my kids about a lot. And it's like obviously, traditional assumption would assume that that's actually an accurate representation because we store things, etc., etc. And so when I find myself in a position where I'm not remembering, because I do forget,
Yeah.
not the right, I can't think of the right word yet, but we'll get there.
It's not thinking of the right word. It's we're so used to using the language of past and present and
Yeah,
future, and traditional approaches are so embedded in our language because that's the assumptions we've followed so for so long. Forget. I forgot to do that thing is a moment in time. Yes, you forgot, but the why, the process of the forgetting is what we're really looking at and what we're
yeah,
really discussing. Like, why did you forget? So it's not inaccurate language. It's just the point of conversation, the scale of
yeah.
conversation is different.
It's just higher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I get to that point, it's like, okay, I don't remember. I just don't remember. And so what I do is l look for it is the best word I can think. And that's the phrase that comes to mind. That's what I think of. I am looking for it. Instead of assuming it is gone, because I am constantly perceiving, there must be something that will that will help me attune to that memory. That where I can go, oh, yes.
You said the word that I've been itching for you to say.
Yeah, I should have just kept it going for as long as possible because if information is in the environment all the time, there must be information in the environment that I can attune to that will give me the memory back.
Yeah, big air quotes there.
Memory. Yeah, that will mean I can remember. And it was interesting because that happened with Erin yesterday. I don't know how to make my bed. I forgot. And and she was told to go upstairs and do it anyway, and just go into her room and do it. And then she said, the moment I put one corner to the side of the bed, I remembered how to do it. And I'm like, yes.
I've cleaned up my room, bugger. I was looking for the thing that I used for the video. Attractor state. It's yes, just there you go, word. Yeah, the way I visualize memory is
Yeah.
attractors. Attractor landscape, think of the sheet, the big sheet, that most of us ecological psychologists love to talk
Sorry,
about.
sorry, I'm gonna have to interrupt because this is just too fun. You can tell I live in Devon because when you say attractor state, all I can see is this big, massive, like, place with a bunch of tractors in it.
Oh, a tractor state. Yes. Okay. Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Can you explain that attractor state?
A tractor state shouldn't exist like that. Right. Okay. So I'm talking about attractor states, not a tractor state. That's
Go
going to get
on.
really confusing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
A tractor state, for those
That's made
completely
that
lost.
worse, by the
Yeah.
way.
No, but that's what I'm saying. For those lost, a tractor state is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an attractor state. So not tractors. And this sheet, this landscape that we're using, the attractors that dip down into it using this visualization, those for me are memories. Right?
Okay.
That's how I would try and conceptualize memories because the attractor states move and shift with control parameters. So as you increase the speed of something, the attractor landscape changes. Therefore, the attractor changes. Therefore, the memory changes.
Yeah.
Right? You're still
Trying
giggling at it.
so hard.
And when I think about remembering something, the landscape and the stable behaviors, i.e., the stable attractor states in the behaviors, those can be found again. It's not really what I want to say, but you can attune to those attractor states when you have detected information that is relevant and you're behaving in that way. Because again, these are emergent behaviors because everything is emergent within the organism environment relationship. So an attractor landscape is somewhat emergent, which means the attractors are again emergent, they're relational properties. So when your daughter went upstairs, the attractor landscape emerged, and the attractor, the stable state, emerged with the perception of affordances, and therefore when she started doing something, so perceiving for action, when she started doing something, the the stable state, the memory, as it were, of her doing her bed is therefore attuned to, and then her behavior then matches it. The more she does it, the more noise goes around in the attractor state. The more she sinks down the attractor state, the more likely she is to remember it because it becomes more stable. And that's where thermodynamics comes into it. And we can now start talking about laws of thermodynamics in physics. Yeah. Splodges and clumps. Yeah. Yeah.
Lodges,
Splodge.
no.
Yeah, splodges and
No.
clumps of energy, thermodynamic
No.
equilibrium, you know.
No. 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 No.
We're not
We're
going
talking
that
about
far, are we?
no, no, please no. We're talking about tractors.
I'm over here talking about thermodynamic laws, and you're like, no, tractor, tractor,
Boom
move
tractor.
wheels.
Wait, go. Yeah.
I found the email that Jeff sent me, so I'm going to read out his response. Actually, I'll read out what I said and then his response. So I said, the ecological approach claims we never stop perceiving, and I say we never stop remembering. That's what I said inside of the video at the moment, anyway. This could be my misunderstanding here, but if perceiving, acting, cognizing systems are continuous, then surely remembering as part of that process doesn't stop either. And his response, so that's my context, his response was, you might be right about this. So again, this is where both of us are trying to figure this out. But the ecological perspective mostly makes the argument that perceiving is not limited to the immediate present. In fact, perceiving never really stops, what I said. So it is unclear exactly where remembering should be inserted. This is why I suggested that you word it in another way around. So he was suggesting I reword it instead of remembering and just perceiving. And I agree, but I also disagree. I would much rather have remembering in there to trigger the conversation than say perceiving and people then ask about memory.
Yeah, because that I think that is the thing. As we were just as you were talking, it was one of the things I hear often in the world that I'm in. What a stupid phrase that was.
Inaction, reflection.
Yeah, I was like, that's a stupid word. That was a stupid phrase. That didn't even make any sense. In the industry that I'm in,
Welcome to my
like,
world.
yeah,
When you speak and you articulate what you're thinking, sometimes, well, a lot of the time when you're thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead of where it is that you're speaking, You come out with words and you're like, okay, that word was from that sentence, but this word is from like two sentences ahead, and I just plugged them together. Now it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. With the industry that I'm in, where forgetting is a thing, kind of one of the kind of things that popped up for me from like a writing in a very specific context is like, where did the forgotten idea go? Because the assumption is we don't have we forget and it's gone, and we never get it back. And so that was kind of like that was one of those
But you
really
do
cool.
get it back when you remember.
Yeah, but well, then where did it go? And that's the question. I'm just like, as I'm hearing these concepts, because one of the things that I'm very attuned to right now is no one gives a shit apart from us.
That's your
And so
perception.
and as I'm kind of listening and thinking through these, like, how would I bring this to my world, as I stupidly put earlier?
How, how would you explain it to other audience members with less expertise?
Yeah, that's the nice, much more accurate way. But we're just going to use world. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's that idea.
because we want the bugs and the termites and the bees and the
Yeah, exactly.
birds all to know about this.
Yeah, exactly. They all got to know. Important.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do they know though? How do we know that they know? How can they trust their senses? Going all the way back to Descartes right now. Ecological psychologists are like, yes, love this conversation. Everyone else is like, no, I'm gone. I'm out. Skip.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I'm
And so, like,
skibbity. There you go. Look, Gen Alpha and me right there. I'm skibbity. I'm gone. I can't believe I just said that. Have you never heard Skibbity? You don't know? Oh, okay, Skibbity Toilet. Your children have not watched Skibbity Toilet. This is
have
this is going to sound
they
really dumb to a lot of people.
yes, I have heard them use that on occasion. Never understood it.
Yeah,
Most of
it's
the time it's yes, queen. That one is one that's you, but
okay.
it's often used ironically,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
because they
Exactly.
find it
That's how I
funny.
use Skibbity right there.
Okay, cool. Fun, thanks for that. Yeah, where did the forgotten idea go? Because that's the question. Because if it's gone and then it comes back, where does it come from? Oh, it comes from my brain. Then you didn't forget it then, did you?
Unsolvable mystery. Insert ecological psychology.
So if you forgot it, where did it come from? Well, my brain. No, no, because then you didn't forget it because your brain stores the memory, right?
Yep. It doesn't get put in a shredder and then suddenly, yeah, the remembering process is like putting the shredder bits back together. No.
Ah, I see. Oh, they probably that would probably be the. Oh, I only remember parts. I said, yeah, and then when you start remembering parts of it, does more of it come through? Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. So what happened?
Well, the man or woman in the library shredded a piece of paper, then they
Mm.
gave you a little bit, and then you found another bit and you matched it together, and some bits are easier to put together than others because there's bigger words on the paper. I'm explaining their argument. You need to be good at explaining someone else's arguments to be able to argue against them. And I know that's dumb. I know the analogy I've just expressed is dumb and doesn't make sense, but it's still what I have heard used. So it's not mine. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I've heard it used. And it's just so frustrating
Okay, cool. So we take small, tiny pieces and we have to spend the time putting it back together.
because memories are different parts.
Ah, right.
You
Okay.
see, that's how the analogy went. They use the analogy to explain the problem, but in by using the analogy, they now have another problem. Well, now you have parts of a memory. How do you know which part goes where? How do you know what goes
How do you
first, what
know
goes
when
second?
when the memory is whole? Like, what is a whole memory?
Exactly. How do you know how big the piece of paper is?
Hmm.
How do you know that
It
you've
could
got
be
the
infinite.
right piece in that
Yeah.
part because you've got other memories that you've forgotten? It's so
Oh,
easy to pick apart arguments when you understand the arguments.
yeah. Yeah. Where did the forgetting idea go? Well, in the environment, could find it. It's not gone. Could
It's an
find it.
emergent Memories are an emergent property of behavior. That's the way I would express it, at least. And when we talk about the internal mind or the mind's eye, that for me is where we are recreating, we are imagining our experiences. So it's still an emergent property because it's an imagined experience, because all of experiences are imagined. Hallucination. And this is where I want to transition slightly. Active inference. Active inference argues for direct perception, apparently.
Oh, do we have to go here?
Now, the reason I want to go here is not because of the paper I've read, even though that was significant. It was because of a conversation that I saw on X with between a fencing coach a baseball coach, a basketball coach, and myself, who is potentially going to start coaching trampoline again. So,
Yeah, we haven't even touched that yet.
yeah, that's true. So, this conversation was about active inference. Sports psychologist goes in there as well, and the sports psychologist works with football players and golf. As I was going to say golf players, but they're not golf players; they're golfers. Um, yeah. So the people on the active inference side was saying that active inference is better than traditional cognitive approaches because it doesn't follow the input process output model. It doesn't follow all of those things. And it doesn't have a central executive that solves all the problems. And it follows embedded, embodied direct perception, just like the ecological approach. However, the active inference approach uses a generative model, and the predictions and prediction errors update this generative model. But if you have this generative model,
Okay.
how do you know what goes in it? If it's direct perception, why do you need a model? Why do you need a model of your experience if you're directly detecting your experience? Spit the words out, boy. Put your teeth in.
So basically, it's their version of a central executive.
Yeah. The generative model that's updated by prediction errors and all the priors and Bayesian hypothesis stuff is a central executive, but you're in control of it.
It's fucking not.
It's this mystical thing that you can't control. Like, how does a generative model control movement behavior because of priors and predictions? But now you're all the way back to Helmholtz tallies. Was it an apple tree or an orange tree? Well, I've seen an apple tree 3 times before, an orange once before. Must be an apple tree. That's literally what predictive processing is. I've seen an apple tree more than I've seen an orange tree. It must be an apple tree. That's indirect perception. That's not direct perception. So when they say we're directly perceiving, I'm like, huh? Yeah, but you have a generative model which is using prediction, which is a tally chart, which is indirect because your senses are inaccurate. I'm so lost. If anyone follows active inference, please reach out to me and talk to me and explain to me how the generative model is not the central executive.
Sounds like the central executive to me.
I'm
Doesn't.
trying to be as open-minded as I can, as in, I want to try and accept as many explanations as possible to see how they work, but I always follow the logic, and it leads to the generative model, which is a central executive. The central executive isn't a thing, it's just a name that cognitive scientists have used for we don't know what happens here, so we're going to call it the central executive. And that's what I can't remember his first name, Badley, the working memory guy, Badley. That's what he was talking about with working memory. He said the central executive part of the working memory model is a placeholder because we don't know what happens there. And what it sounds like active inference are doing is renaming the central executive to generative model. And I'm like, the other things that they say, they use words and terms to replace Gibsonian terms, but it just matches ecological psychology. It's like they're taking the bits of ecological psychology they want and they like and make sense and there's evidence for, but they don't like the true direct perception because it's magical. I'm like, no, it's not magical. It's just you can't explain it through machines because just because a machine can't do it doesn't mean it's magical. It means it's
This
emergent.
this has got me thinking about AI.
But AI and machines is how we try and explain the body. If you're trying to explain the body
Yeah, because this
through
is the thing.
machines, then you need a generative model because you need a program to make it work. We don't need a program.
That was something I've been thinking about as you were talking. It just reminds me of this whole conversation around generative AI and making it more human. And a question just popped up to me going, can that actually, is that possible? And from an ecological perspective, I don't think it is. Because until an artificial intelligence can directly perceive, no. And is that consciousness then?
You are now right in the weeds of where my research is. Like
Like,
you you're at the front lines of ecological psychology right there, and that is what people are looking into. That is the papers that are so jargon heavy that you would need to understand the consciousness science, the psychology and philosophy behind consciousness, also understand enough about AI and how how the machines work, alongside direct perception. You need all three of those bases to read any of these articles, and I'm there, but I'm only just there. So
Because that's an interesting thing of like, because that's exactly what AI tools would. Because even when I think about my interaction with AI, I am always guiding it, as we've discussed. I'm always get, and if you use an AI as a coach to bounce ideas off of, the person you're bouncing ideas off of are yourself.
it's just embedded cognition.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's not necessarily bad either. It's
It's embedded cognition.
yeah, and it's quite interesting because my relationship with AI has changed because I realize that.
My personal opinion right now is we can't have an AI human because
No,
AI requires a loan of intelligence.
yeah,
It requires a programmer of some sort to put in it
it
things to work.
requires a central executive.
Yes. And I would explain this through thermodynamics because thermodynamics is how species evolve. Why does a species evolve? Because it wants to create what's called an energy sink. It wants to bring all the energy together to make more disorder in the world, entropy and all that, and then disperse. So the world, long story short, the world wants equilibrium. It wants everything to be completely stable. But in order to do that, it needs to disperse all of the energy that are in clumps. We, as an organism, are a clump, and the universe wants to disperse it all. How does it disperse it all? Well, brings it together to blow it up, basically. I'm skipping over
We are a clump, 2020.
yeah,
Danny.
I'm simplifying a lot of physics here. Like disclaimer,
Sorry,
warning,
it was
simplify.
it was it was just a we are a clump, Danny Hatcher 2024.
We're a clump of energy. We are an energy sink. But yeah, so when you have energy that isn't being consumed, well, the universe is then going to go, hey, we need to clump this up to disperse it, basically, or disment. I don't remember what the actual word is for it. But yeah, basically, we want to clump stuff together to spread it out. Which means if there is available energy inside of the world, a species will evolve. Take plastic, for example. Plastic is non-biodegradable because no species can consume it, eat it, turn it into an energy sink. But that's a lie because species have evolved to consume it. There is the plastic-eating waxworm, which I learnt about recently. There are plastic-eating microorganisms. There is nowhere near enough of them to solve our plastic problem, but the species have evolved because the energy is there. The energy of plastic is a clump, and it can't be dispersed, so the world needs a species that can disperse it, i.e., consume it. So the universe, through thermodynamics, evolved a species, plastic-eating waxworm, to disperse said energy. Why would a species evolve a robot, an AI robot? What energy is it helping to disperse? Nada. So evolution won't create the species, which for me suggests it can't be a organism, a species, because it hasn't evolved. It's been created. And if it's been created by an organism, then it's what's called niche construction. Like when beavers put wood to make a dam, like that's niche construction. That's what I would see an AI robot is. It's niche construction, only a human version of niche construction, which means it's not an organism. It's part of the niche environment. That's my logic right now. That went really, really deep. You're doing a nodding impression.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of I like that. A niche construction.
That's how I see AI. I would say AI is niche construction through humans. They
Yeah.
are They are things that we have created to help us navigate the environment world we are in, the environmental niche we are in, because we can't fly, so we niche constructed a plane. We can't swim, so we niche constructed boats, submarine. We don't want to do certain things because we're a lazy species, so we build an AI to do it for us. I see AI as niche construction.
Yeah.
So it's not an organism, therefore it can't be human.
It
And I
writes bits
don't
of code that I can't be asked to do.
Exactly. And I don't see a niche construction being conscious. I don't think a block of wood is conscious. I don't think a phone is conscious. I don't think it can think. What I
Mhm.
do think is it can become part of embedded cognition with an
Yeah.
organism, so it can have cognizing properties, emergent cognizing properties, when it's engaged with an organism. But it can't think itself. That's where I disagree with extended cognition, and I follow embodied embedded cognition instead, because I don't think a phone has cognitive properties. I think a
Yeah.
phone has emergent cognitive properties when it engages with an organism.
Yeah. So once it's directly interacting with us, it does stuff. Right now, my phone is sat there doing nothing. It
Mhm.
doesn't. There's nothing. It's just there. But the
Yeah,
moment I pick it up and look at it, nothing. There's an interaction.
precisely. And that going back to attractor states, organisms are required for emergent attractor states to appear. Otherwise, the machine will do what the machine does, like either nothing or it will follow its program until its inevitable end. So yeah, there you go. That's how the world began, and and AI consciousness.
We're on one today.
Yeah, we've gone high level. Hey, here's an app, like using it, to really deep. Hey, here's niche construction and thermodynamic laws of evolution. So now over to trampoline, because I assume you want to ask questions.
Yeah. What?
What isn't a question that's relevant right there? I said trampoline. What? What is a trampoline? I can tell you what a
Yeah,
trampoline
yeah.
is.
What's a trampoline? No. So talk to like, how did this emerge as all of a sudden you wish to go back trampolining after not being a trampolining for 4 years? You said? Yeah, 4 years.
Ish, yeah, about that.
What?
That
What?
is a
Yeah.
great question.
No.
Essentially, it has emerged because of the variation, the variability in the constraints in my environment.
Oh, so to say more,
Right.
because nobody but me understood that. And I have no context for what you've just said.
Yes, yes, exactly. That was the point. Extremely vague.
Thanks.
I guess stepping back, when I was at university, so this is end of my undergraduate, beginning of my postgraduate, I transitioned my main activity, my main physical activity, from football and handball. Well, football sort of, handball and trampoline. I transitioned that and heavied. I I did more trampoline as in I trained more. So the hours were less, but the actual training itself was more. Because in
Yeah.
trampoline, you can either be on the trampoline or off the trampoline through most. When I say trampoline, I'm talking about Olympic trampoline. I think I need to be explicit when I say this because I'm not talking garden trampolining and bouncing around on a garden trampoline. I'm not talking about the trampoline parks where you've got like mini trampets all over the place. And I'm not talking about rebounding where you jump up and down on like a keep fit sort of thing. Oh, no, I'm talking Olympic trampoline, going 6+ meters in the air, doing 2, 3 somersaults. I didn't really do 3 somersaults because that was in a pit, but 2 somersaults and somersault after somersault, doing routines and skills like that. So Olympic trampoline. When you do Olympic trampoline, you can't really do it for an entire hour, unlike if you're at a trampoline park, because it's extremely explosive. And when I say extremely explosive, I'm talking. I did my undergraduate dissertation on this, so you can, depending on obviously how high you go, how heavy you are, and all the other variables, you can have about 8 to 16 Gs going through your body when you land on a trampoline. Yes, that's at maximum, which is a lot. So when you're
Hmm.
training, that's a lot of force going through your body. And trampoline is extremely good for your health. Not extreme Olympic sport trampoline training because that's a lot of force going through your body. It's like running a marathon. Running a marathon is not good for your health, but casual running activity, like yes, that's good for your health. So the Olympic training, Olympic trampoline training that I was doing was far more intense. So instead of the 1.5 hour session I was doing at the previous club, which is I would get on, do a couple of bounces, do a couple of moves, maybe do a few somersaults here and there, and mess around, then get off and then talk, mainly with the coach or other people my age. I was training. I was because of the club. I was drilling. I was getting on. I was doing 5 tuckbacks in a row with the perfect technique, or 5 straight backs, 5 pipe backs, Baranis, whatever you call it. Or I was drilling up the end of my routine, the beginning of my routine. That's how trampoline is trained, which
Yeah.
I really want to change. We'll get to that part.
I
And
had a feeling that was where you were going.
Yeah, we'll get to that part. And I was heavily in the world of trampoline national. So I competed nationally. So I was going to Wales, going London Velodrome, competing in the Velodrome. So I'm not bad at trampoline, but I'm not good at trampoline either. I was on the national circuit, not on the international circuit, just national league. I was League Two, so League One is the best, then League Two, then League Three, then there's regional competitions. So I was League Two, and I was almost podium place League Two. I'm talking like fourth place, third place, fifth place. That's sort of where I hovered. Mainly because people in League One don't go to League One because they're going to lose, so they go in League Two and then they take the top spot easy. And I'm like, but hey, that's competition for it. So that's what I did. Sort of end of undergrad, postgrad. Then when I focused in on my university, I stopped training, obviously, because dissertation takes time. But I still trained. Then COVID hit. And obviously everything was shut down. You couldn't train,
Yeah.
you couldn't do anything. And a lot of trampoline clubs shut
Gee.
because you to trampoline, you need a trampoline, which is like £1,000 at a cheap trampoline. An Olympic trampoline is like 2.5 grand. Then you have the mats on the side, which are so you have the spotting deck, which is about 600. You have the mat that goes on top of that, which is about 200. You need two of those. Then you have the floor mats and the pushing mat. So it's about £6,000 good to stable because you need all the surfacing and the insurance and stuff. So it's about £6,000 for a trampoline to start with. And that's for a club, one trampoline. If you've got 10 people and you've got a person that goes on a minute, you get 1 minute of trampolining per 10 minutes of training. That that's not a good turnout, like when it comes to a club. So you need more than one trampoline. Most stable clubs have four trampolines, but the trampolines aren't very good. So, so if you have competitive trampolinists, you need huge competitive trampolines. So as you can see, trampoline clubs freaking expensive.
Yeah.
So a lot of clubs just folded because they used sports centers, but it has to be a tall ceiling sports center because you're jumping 6 meters. You don't want to hit a ceiling.
Yeah.
So a lot of trampolines clubs just shut. The ones that
Yeah.
stayed open have their own facilities, but
Mm.
the ones that stay open that have their own facilities do other things as well. There's a facility in Gillingham close to me. They've got 18 trampolines consistently set up, and they've got rigs, so they've got wires and bungee cables that come from the ceiling to the trampoline to help with somersaults. That's permanently set up, and that's where a lot of trampoline courses happen, and that's how they maintain the building. But it's next to a sports centre. It's next to Gillingham Centre, so you've got the
Okay.
swimming, the gyms, all the other normal stuff. So it's supported. I don't know how the business and finances work. I believe the trampoline does its own thing now, but that's where competitions, regional competitions are held in the southeast at least. And other big clubs, trampoline clubs, are tied with gymnastics. So Liverpool, for example, Liverpool Trampoline Club, the best club in the UK, probably because they have the most that go to the GB team, if that's how you want to measure trampolining. That is gymnastics. So it's a gymnastics club with trampoline, but trampoline is the main push.
Yeah.
So there's not many clubs around. And getting back into trampoline was also difficult, made difficult by the fact that I lost my eyesight in my right eye.
Yeah. Kind of.
So like depth perception was a challenge. So when I'm jumping, I'm like,
Oh.
how high am I? I don't know. Do a somersault. Where's the trampoline? I don't know. Which
Yep.
pain in the ass.
Yep.
So I didn't trampoline. And my biggest gripes with trampoline while I was in trampoline, so I started trampolining when I was 13, 14, something like that. So I've been trampolining for a while, and I love trampoline. It's great for fitness, it's great for health, it's great for communication, and it's probably one of the best activities to do for physical health because it's it if it's done appropriately, it's low impact on the knees and back. If it's done appropriately, which running isn't because running's hard impact because it's on the floor. But it also works all of your body. So cycling, where you're sat down, you can just sit there and push your legs. Trampoline, you can't not use your body, which is why rebounding is quite popular. So trampoline has a lot of potential for physical activity and health, which is why I want to do it. But it also has loads of opportunities in performance as well. It's a performance sport. But the way trampoline clubs are run is all performance. It's gymnastics. If you're familiar with gymnastics, you may think of the 4-year-old girl that's sitting in splits that can't get down and the coach is pushing her shoulders. Like it's nasty, it happens, and it's been happening for years. And there's so many other really, really poor practices that happen in gymnastics. Loads of scandals have come out recently about BG as well. And trampoline, unfortunately, is part of that. In competition, one of the things I wish I could change is you have to wear a leotard or a unitard or whatever you want to call it. Girls don't want to wear leotards. A lot of girls don't want to wear leotards. Boys certainly don't want to wear leotards because they are not comfortable. But you
No.
have to in competition. And just for clarity, boys do wear what's called stirrups, which are basically like trousers that go over the top, so you don't have just the leotard stuff. But the boys can wear stirrups, the girls can't. That to me is unfair. The girls
Mm.
can't even wear shorts, like skin tight shorts, which again, unfair. So that's just a practice inside a trampoline competition. But when it comes to training, there is a correct technique. This is how you somersault. This is how you
Ah.
go forwards. This is how you go backwards. This is how you do a seat landing. You need to reach your arms up. Then you need this degree of rotation and this degree of twist. And that's the trampoline clubs. But when you look at garden trampolinists and freestyle trampoline, they do loads of stuff. And they don't have coaches. They don't have the best technique, but they can do quads, quints, triples, quads, quints, and six, even septuples, which is like seven somersaults in one bounce. It looks disgusting, and they can't do anything after it or before it because that's the skill, but it's the way of doing it. And it's literally just big trampoline plus mat plus jump and spin quick. That's freestyle trampoline. So if you have freestyle trampoline, you have physical health for trampoline, but then you have Olympic trampoline. Why
Hmm.
in the world don't you put them together?
That's cool.
And that's what I've been thinking about. Hence my interest into bringing trampoline somewhere local. And what really catalyzed my oomph to go was Brighton University, Eastbourne campus, is moving to the Falmer campus locally to me. Eastbourne campus is where I did my degree. And because it's moving, obviously, there's now going to be a massive sports hall that is going to be owned by some company, probably Wave Active or South Downs Health or who knows what, which means there's going to be a huge sports hall facility available. And in Eastbourne, there aren't many of them, especially not many that can house a trampoline that you can jump more than 3 meters up. Because most sports centers are built for basketball.
Yeah.
But if you've got someone that's competent at trampoline, they're going to hit that ceiling or hit the bars that come across the ceiling where the lights pretty easy. I mean, I can in a lot of the sports centers close to me. I just can't bounce in those rooms because they get too close to the ceiling. So all of that together, my want to get back to trampoline for physical health and activity, my interest as a coach to want to try and do trampoline coaching differently,
Yeah.
and the availability of the sports hall all put together makes me interested in getting back into trampoline. There's my trampoline story for you.
So you can do it.
I mean, obviously, running a trampoline club, there's money involved. It's a business. Every sports club, there's a business. I would like to do it. I'm working out how the logistics will work. So planning out logistics, but I'm going to have to suck it up a little bit because to run a club, you need to have NGB qualifications, National
Yeah.
Governing Body qualifications. So I need to do a BG course. Well, actually, I need to do multiple BG courses. So I need to do a British Gymnastics Level 1 to coach anyone. I then need to do a British Gymnastics Level 2 to actually run a club, to run a session safely. And if anyone is going to do more than a front somersault, i.e., a Barani or a back somersault, I think I need to start doing British Gymnastics either Level 3 or it's called like a Module 1 of Level 2. I don't know what it's called anymore, but I got to do courses. So even though I have 2 degrees in sports coaching and I've been researching this for almost 10 years, I need some BG coach to tell me how to coach. And the safeguarding paperwork is safeguarding courses. I mean, that's just a normal safeguarding DBS check coursey
Oh, yeah.
stuff, which, yeah, I need to get that. Fine. I'm not going to do anything silly. So, yep, that's fine. But I do need to do the courses. And before I can do the courses, obviously it's upfront cost. So I need to
Yeah.
work out how much upfront cost is, then how much it's going to cost to hire out the hall. Then when you do have participants, how much do you charge the participants to make sure you don't lose money on the hall? Because hall hire, I mean, say it's like £50 for an hour and you have 10 people, that's £5 a person. So you need at least 10 people per session just to be even
Yeah.
for an hour. So yeah,
I'd assume it'd be a lot of time.
could be. It could be. I mean, if, again, this is me working things out, logistics, if in an ideal world, I have participants that hit the number line, so call it a 15-minute setup time, 15-minute takedown time, because you've got to set the trampolines up and take them down, unless the center's going to do that, but most centers aren't trained to set up trampolines because they don't have trampolines. That's going to be an hour and a half per session, and calling a session an hour. Some sessions are an hour and a half, or maybe if you have two sessions together, maybe that's a 2 hour block. Then that's essentially an evening taken out because it's going to be 3 hours, like prep, turn up, travel time, and then down, travel time back home. So it's going to be like 3 hours for a 1 hour session, which is similar for most sports anyway. When you're coaching, like football, you've got to turn up beforehand and do whatever you need to do, unless they're self-sufficient, which adult football they are. And I would love to get into running a sports club, maybe with someone. Obviously, Scott runs his own martial arts gym, so I imagine it's something similar. But yeah, so yes, it will take time, but the coaching stuff, the research stuff, I'm doing that already. So it's the action bit that would take the time,
I
which
suppose you're like, I can't, it's not the right phrasing, so I'm just gonna say it anyway. Like you are in the very much of the thinking, planning for thing for most of what you do. It's very research heavy, which is a I suppose a thinking, cognizing activity, which you turn into action through your videos, through your articles and stuff like that. And it sounds like you're kind of wanting to have more of the actiony piece from the research that you're doing.
yes,
Like
y
more action that is
practice.
yeah.
Using the ecological approach to explain, me putting theory into practice at the moment is through me.
Yeah.
I put my own theory through my own practice. If I want to develop a skill, then I do.
Yeah.
So my ability to practice, my expertise is in myself, in
Yes.
coaching myself, in teaching myself, in
Yes.
educating myself. If I want to gain expertise in helping other people coach others, I need expertise in coaching others.
Yes.
The only way I can get expertise in coaching others is by coaching others. The easiest way for me to do that is either coaching others online, which is what I'm doing through technology. But if I want to talk about coaching others through sport, I need to coach through a sport. Because if I'm going to talk to sports coaches, equestrian, basketball, netball, tennis, whoever, and I say, oh, yeah, I do that through this in my Zoom call with this person on a technology platform, there's a
Mm.
massive disconnect there with the level of expertise.
Mm.
If we're going through sports, they can then relate because it's more me teaching a person physical movement, motor skills, rather than a highly technical skill that is mainly embedded within technology.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I want to have my level of expertise and practice and engage in areas that I want to help other people in because one, it helps credibility. Two, it helps my practice. Three, it's interesting and fun. But mainly, it helps my own understanding of the research. Because research
Mm.
can only take you so far. You actually need to do the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting because I obviously read the new paper that's just been recently released. I think that's actually a week. Was that a week ago? I don't remember.
New
Time.
paper? Are you talking the Miguel's
Uh,
book?
yes, Miguel's book. I
Hmm.
was looking through that, and there was so much. Like I didn't realize this until I was thinking about it as we were talking. I'm like, I've reached the point now where I'm reading it. I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. Cool, I get that now. And I don't think that I saw my level of expertise at all until I
Mm.
read that. I was like, oh, okay, cool. No, I do. Because you've said it, but of course, I didn't agree.
Knowledge
And
of,
then,
knowledge about.
yeah, exactly. And so it was interesting to read that and I'm like, okay, cool, cool. And as my focus is, we're both doing basically the same thing, whereas I'm heading into the business and doing it in business, and you're going back into sport and doing it in sport. It's cool.
Yep. Well,
It's cool.
potentially. I mean, the
Uh,
sports center doesn't close until July, so it'll probably open up September time. But it gives me 6 months to work out one, the logistic. Well, that's a massive one, the logistics.
I also think that reminds me of like when we were talking because I think it was last week you were like you must have got further than that with because I mentioned I want to bring ecological like the philosophy into business and you're like you must have got further than that because you were saying that back in Berlin and it was I was like oh yeah, have I got further? And I realized it was that one logistic because all of this time I needed to gain expertise in that, test it on myself. And now I'm seeing quite quick, alarming results for myself. And then, of course, because other people are seeing it, I'm also talking to them. So even my family, I see differences. So I'm like, okay, cool. All right, let's bring it into business now. Because, and I was talking to someone the other day, and I was coaching them through something, and I immediately went into and I used the environment of a technology platform because that's what we were discussing. And they're like, oh yeah, I never thought about that because I can't really set anything up in this because they're looking at moving their course to a new platform. And they're like, should I remake the course now in this platform and just make it fit together, or should I wait until I move it to the new platform? And I went, I mean, you could do it now, sure, but if you move it into a new platform, you're going to have different opportunities when you move it in that. And I actually went, you are going to have different opportunities for behavior and action and what it would look like. So the course is going to completely change. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I just was saying, and I just sat there going, so that's how I use the ecological approach without talking all of the science, except I am talking all of the science. But because there is the clear context, they're like getting it, which is why my social media cannot just be me talking about the ecological approach.
But that's the thing. The ecological approach is the language that's used to explain situations, and that's the important thing. I've seen Greg Souders talk about this in the martial arts conversation. He doesn't coach his participants, athletes. I don't know what he refers to them as. He doesn't coach people using all of the jargon. He
Mm.
just gives them a goal. He gives them a goal to achieve in a game, and then the behavior emerges with the goal. So you don't need to explain why they're doing it, the constraints or the affordances or attunement of anything. Don't need to explain any of that. Just tell them I could do this thing. This is one of those things that I was thinking about when like 2 nights ago when I just wasn't sleeping because I was just thinking constantly. Traditionally, when you teach trampoline to do a seat landing, which is where you go from your feet, you land on your bum and you stand back up again,
Yeah,
you're told, okay, yes, you're probably told land on your bum, stand back up again, but that's it. You get taught those two skills, right? You get taught to go from feet to bum to feet. You go from standing to feet to bum to feet, then maybe with a mat under you to make it safer, feet bum feet. There's nothing else to it. It's just that's the thing. That's what you do. And then as you develop that, you start bouncing. So you move your arms. Make sure your arms are up, then they go down, then they go up. Make sure your legs are straight, make sure your toes are pointed, and you get all these instructions. How do you teach that through the constraints-led approach? That's what I was asking myself. How do you get to feet from your bum if you don't have the momentum from coming up? How do you do that? Because for me, that's a fun game. Sit on the trampoline, now get to your feet without straightening your legs.
that's cool.
How are they going to do that? They got to figure it out. They'll probably roll over and then push up with their arms and then try and like fling themselves up, or they could bounce on their bum and then try and swing themselves round or swing forwards. But they're navigating the attractor layout, the landscape of the trampoline, and their body position. Eventually, because the easiest way to do it is by doing a seat landing to feet, they will figure out how to get from their bum to their feet with straight legs.
So cool.
I don't know how this would work in practice because I haven't tried it, but now they've figured out how to navigate from bum to feet. What would happen if you go from feet to bum and then go back to feet? I'm guessing because they are more familiar with bum to feet, it won't be from feet to bum to, oh my God, I don't know where I'm going because that's what I've seen a lot of the time when people learn seat landings. They go from feet, then they like kill themselves when they hit the trampoline because they don't know where it's going to push them. When I say kill themselves, I mean they kill the bed. They stop the bed from bouncing. They just try and like spread themselves out, or they end up bouncing and going who knows what direction and scare themselves because it is scary. Like
Yeah,
trampoline, if you can't control where you're going, it's all over the place. So
yeah.
how do you control that variability all over the place? Yeah, constrain the environment so you don't go from standing to seated. You just go from seated and then stand up.
That's cool.
And obviously, then you can change that to okay, instead of go from sitting on the trampoline with straight legs to get to your feet. Now I want you to get to feet, but I want you to face the other way. So now they're going to roll, but now they're on their front. How do they get from their front to their feet? Well, or they could go on their bum, they can swivel around on their bum and then do a seat landing to feet. That's one way of doing it. How do you do it quicker? Well, I don't know. I'd have to do a seat landing and then twist when I get up. Now you've got a seat landing, half twist to feet. Is it going to take longer to learn than just go seat landing, stand up, now half twist, seat landing, stand up, now half twist? Right, now take out the stand up bit. They're two drastically different skills.
Yeah.
And through exploring that from the seat and then stand to face the other way, they will probably learn seat landing, half twist to front landing at the same time because you will roll over to the front. Seat landing, half twist to front landing is the first half of a seat roller, which is a skill people most of the time teach. Right, from feet to seat landing, now do a full twist to seat landing. Where in the world does that come from? Where's the progressions? Well, now you want to go seat landing, bounces, and then roll over to your front. Well, if you've already taught them that through learning how to do a seat landing, you don't need to teach them this seat bounces, then roll to front, then seat landing, and then roll to front, and then roll to sit. You don't need to teach them those isolated drills and skills because they've already explored that through learning how to do a seat landing. So it
Yeah.
saves the upfront cost for me anyway. But again, I haven't put this in practice. And trampoline coaches, if anyone is happening to listen to this, let me know. I doubt it, but hopefully that explains what it is that I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like that. It's good. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and like your journey towards that. It sounds exciting.
I guess their skills in trampoline, they're what I would call they're called fundamental skills because you
Yeah.
need to learn the fundamentals first. Seat landing, you learn. I don't see them as fundamental skills. I see them as crashes. Like, why do you do a seat landing? Because you under rotated a front somersault. Why do you do a back landing? Because you over rotated a back somersault. Why do you do a front landing? Because you over rotated a front somersault. Like if you go too fast in a front somersault, you miss your feet. Where are you going to land? On your front. If you over rotate going backwards, where are you going to land? On your back. So you learn the skills because there's a reason to. Most people, when they go trampoline, say, "What do you want to learn?" "Oh, I want to learn a flip." It's a somersault, but okay, fine. If they do that, how are they going to crash? They're going to crash forwards or backwards, or they're going to undershoot. That's front landing, seat landing, back landing. But unless they understand that, they when they do their seat landings, like, why am I learning this? This is so boring. This is dumb. Well, yeah, the coach knows that it's helping them to crash, but they don't know.
Yeah.
So why
Rather
don't you
than
just get them to flip on a
actually,
trampoline and then they'll learn to do a seat landing? You're like, okay, now you're on your bum. How do you get back to feet again? Now we go back to what we were talking about. But that's Olympic skills. Trampoline, from health perspective, it's an unstable surface. Elderly population are meant to do balance work. They're meant to do, I think it's an hour of balance work a week. What does balance training mean? Like in the research, balance training is all over the place because what are you balancing for? Are you balancing while walking, while running, while standing on one leg? Because balance isn't a skill. Balance is an emergent property. And this is where cognitive psychology and ecological psychology differ with physical activity. How can you show that you are agile? What is agility in sport? Is it you darting in between cones? No, like agility is the reaction to another person. So balance for the elderly population, how do you train balance? Well, it's the variability, the adaptability of their balancing skill. But if they're only sitting down and standing up and walking between walls, their exposure to other experiences is limited. So how do you help the elderly population to balance? You put them on unstable surfaces. What's an unstable surface? A mat, a trampoline. So they don't need to bounce on the trampoline. Just get an elderly person walking from one side of the trampoline to the other side of the trampoline, probably with support to start with if they're unstable on their feet. But all you got to do is walk next to them. You walking next to them is also unstable. So you need to coordinate with them and they need to coordinate with you. Now we're not doing traditional Olympic trampoline. We're doing health work with an elderly population. We're just getting them to walk backwards and forwards from a trampoline. And there's research to show that people on a trampoline have better balance, they have better core stability and control, and it helps with female and stuff. I don't know enough about the research, but females, I think it's after pregnancy, they struggle with different elements of body parts. And trampoline helps with that because they got to tense, squeeze. I don't know enough of the anatomy and enough of their problems and appropriate descriptions, so I'm just going to leave it like that. But trampoline can therefore help with females after birth, but also females that are struggling to cope with the body changes that birth has, because a lot of females, obviously, when they go through birth, I have no idea because obviously I'm not female. I haven't had a partner that's had birth either, but their body changes, and them getting used to the new body requires them to relearn, reattune to their body's abilities and action capabilities. Trampoline can help with that. And yes, I know I'm saying trampoline, but movement can help with that, whether it's step workout, cycling, walking, whatever, just physical activity. But trampoline has the advantage where it's an unstable situation, it's a mat, and you can do things on a trampoline you can't do on a physical floor, i.e., be weightless. And unless you're gonna jump on the floor, which means you'll have a solid landing afterwards, you can't really mimic that. So yeah, and you can make trampoline intense or
Yeah,
not.
yeah. I was just thinking of like the parallels of business of like how business is unstable as hell. And
Yep.
I'm just like all of these things, like just thinking about like when you're bringing in money, revenue, when you're using technology, the tools, when you're marketing, it's all unstable. It's all like there isn't really stability in any
Mm.
of it. And so the skills of the ecological,
Variability in nature.
yeah, it's just variable. And because time and yeah, it's just really cool because as I think about from the business perspective around how the skills like it's just so cool the idea of being able to do that and provide that opportunity for others from my perspective of like people going, oh, okay, cool. This is actually quite easy. Yes. Yes. Oh yeah, things fell apart, but I've done this. I'm like, yes, I know. Yes. And just my own relationship with my own business that's changed of like, oh, this is a week where not a lot has been done because of everyone's at home. So what can I do? Okay, cool. I'll just do what I can. And it's just all of the stuff that gets in the way of so many business owners, that imposter syndrome, the productivity, the organizational piece, the this, the that. It's just gone because the assumptions are so different
It's a radically different view of the world.
and it works. And it's not, it doesn't require effort.
Well, everything does, but
Yeah, yeah, okay, fine. A significantly less amount of effort. No, different amount of effort. Different type of effort.
direction, maybe?
Direction, yeah, direction of effort. Yes, there we go. Direction of effort. That's better. Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
All
Okay.
right.
I think that covers us for today. Is there anything
I
else you want to add?
no.
Good, because I'm stopping the recording.